Incredible discovery. Police dog uncovers shocking conspiracy behind little girl's midnight hunt. The wind whistled through the trees, carrying the haunting sound of unseen whispers as 8-year-old Emily tiptoed out of her house, her bright eyes wide with curiosity. Her heart raced with a thrill that only a child could feel, unaware of the danger that lurked in the shadows. Just down the street, her father, Officer Jake Miller, was finishing up a long day of work, the weight of a recent divorce heavy on his shoulders. He glanced towards home, where Emily awaited, blissfully innocent yet unwittingly caught up in a night storm neither could foresee. That same night, Jake, with his trusted police dog Max by his side, was prowling the dark alleys of their small town. The economic climate had been rough lately, squeezing the life out of their community. But the whispers of financial desperation brought something sinister: two drug dealers seizing the vulnerability of families like theirs. Jake gritted his teeth, vowing to protect the town he loved, even if it meant sacrificing his own peace. Each case of domestic disturbances weighed on him, shrouded in the obscurity of despair. Suddenly, a frantic bark pierced the stillness, a warning. Max's instincts kicked in as he tore through the alleyway, following a familiar scent that led directly to Emily. Jake's breath caught in his throat, panic electrifying every nerve as he dashed towards the sound, the air thick with urgency. He could feel the familiar tightness in his chest that came when danger struck close to home. What if he was too late? He rounded the corner just in time to see his daughter crouched next to a van, the flickering light inside revealing the shadows of several figures huddled together, whispering secrets and exchanging something that screamed danger. Fear washed over him in waves as the realization that the very people he fought against had lured his little girl into their web. "Emily," he called, his voice sharp with terror and authority. She looked up, wide-eyed, innocence flooding her face. At that moment, Max lunged, his bark booming through the alley, cutting through the tension like a knife. The figures turned, startled, their plans unraveling at the sight of the determined dog. Jake felt a rush of adrenaline coursing through him as he stepped protectively in front of Emily, the instinct to shield her overwhelming every other emotion. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. The confrontation escalated, the figures recognizing the danger of being caught. Jake's heart raced as he backtracked, assessing the situation, knowing the importance of timing. His daughter's safety depended on it. Max kept barking, standing tall, ready to defend. In that moment, the blurred line between being a father and a protector sharpened, leaving Jake to wrestle with a deeper realization of loyalty, justice, and sacrifice. As the threat loomed larger, Jake's decision became clear. The very foundation of his existence hinged on the principles he lived by: family and integrity. He stood at a crossroads. Would he retreat, or step into the battle for everything he loved? With Emily beside him, Jake felt the pull of urgency and determination. Their town hung on the edge of uncertainty, and he knew it was his moment to rise. The darkness crouched around them, but within that cold, a flicker of hope ignited. Would he brave the storm ahead? Jake's pulse thundered in his ears as he faced the figures: three men in dark clothing, their movements tense and unpredictable. Fear wrapped around him like a cocoon, yet the presence of his daughter ignited a resolve he never knew he had. He could almost hear his heart whispering to him, reminding him of the promises he made to keep her safe. "Stay close to me, Emily," he commanded, his voice firm yet filled with urgency. She pressed herself against his leg, her tiny frame trembling as she peered around him, wide-eyed with both fear and curiosity. "You should have kept her out of this." One of the men spat, his voice low and menacing. There was a gleam of something sharp in his hand, and Jake's instincts flared. He had dealt with threats before, but this was different. It was personal. Max sensed the tension, muscles coiled and ready to spring. Without hesitation, he lunged forward, snarling, his deep bark echoing in the alley. The men stumbled back, their confidence shaken, but Jake knew that intimidation alone wouldn't win this fight. He needed to act fast. Turn around and leave. Now! Jake shouted, adrenaline rushing through him, turning his voice into a weapon. The men hesitated, glancing at one another as they weighed their options. Jake could see the doubt flicker across their faces. But then, something changed, the air grew heavy, charged with a danger he couldn't predict. One of the men took a calculated step forward, his face twisted in defiance. "We're not going anywhere, cop. Kids like her don't belong in a place like this." "Enough." Jake's voice boomed, shaking with authority. He took a step closer, preparing to protect Emily at all costs. Fear mingled with determination, and he could feel her small hand gripping his leg tightly, grounding him. At that moment, a siren blared in the distance, a piercing reminder of impending backup. The sound resonated in Jake's chest, filling him with hope, but he knew they needed to hold their ground until help arrived. The men exchanged worried glances, the arrival of law enforcement lending strength to Jake's resolve. "If you know what's good for you, you'll leave now," he warned, stepping in front of Emily protectively. They hesitated, uncertainty creeping into their tough exterior. In the blink of an eye, Jake made a split-second decision. "Max, go!" he commanded, pointing towards the nearest man. The dog bolted forward, teeth bared, the embodiment of Jake's protective instincts. In that chaotic moment, everything shifted. The men scrambled, panic overtaking them like wildfire, attempting to evade the incoming storm. Jake felt a surge of power as he sensed their retreat, and he tightened his grip on Emily's hand. They were almost safe, but just as victory seemed within reach, one of the men lunged, desperation in their eyes. "You don't know what you're getting into," he shouted, voice thick with anger and fear. "What do you mean?" Jake's voice was steady as he searched for a hint of understanding. Why were they so desperate to intimidate him? What did they want from his family? As the sirens blared louder, drawing closer, a thundering realization hit him hard. This was bigger than just a midnight heist. Something dark was weaving through their town, and his family was at the heart of it. As the night shook with changing tides, questions raced through his mind. Was Emily's innocence a target now? And who was really pulling the strings behind this sinister plot? With confusion and fear grating against his nerves, Jake could only look down at Emily, her wide eyes searching for answers he didn't have. "Stay behind me, sweetheart," he whispered, readying himself for the next wave of danger, determined to shield her from whatever came next. Little did they know, the truth was lurking just around the corner. Would it reveal the answers they desperately needed, or plunge them deeper into darkness? The alley was painted in shadows, the echo of sirens weaving through the heavy air. Jake felt the tension surge, his heart pounding as he tightened his grip on Emily's small hand. She looked up at him, searching his face for reassurance. Behind him, Max stood ready, a fierce protector, but would even that be enough? Jake's eyes darted back to the men, who were now hesitating. Uncertainty flickered across their faces, conflict playing out in the air thick with danger. Had they realized the sirens were closer? Did they know they were outmatched? It didn't matter, he had no intention of waiting to find out. "Don't move," Jake urged, the words gritting out of his throat as he positioned himself like a wall between Emily and the threat. Sweat trickled down his back, and his mind raced through every protective instinct honed over years on the force. He couldn't let them exploit his daughter's innocence any further. One man stepped forward again, a twisted smile spreading across his face. "You think you can hide her away in this pretty little bubble, huh? But guess what, cop? You're in over your head. You have no idea what's coming next." Jake's breath hitched. The implications hung between them like a noose tightening around his family's future. He needed answers, and that urgency propelled him. "I'm not going to let you hurt her," he growled, channeling every ounce of fury into his voice. You don't even know who you're dealing with. Maybe not, the man replied, confidence creeping back, but it faltered as the distant sound of tires screeching and boots hitting pavement became distinct in the night. But you may find out sooner than you think. With that, the men moved. Two of them twisted toward the entrance of the alley, their bodies moving like shadows fleeing the light. But the last one lunged a dart of motion directed at Jake. In that split second, instinct kicked in. "Max!" Jake shouted, and the dog sprang into action, launching himself toward the man. The alley erupted into chaos, a flash of fur and teeth met desperation. Jake's blood rushed in his ears, drowning out everything else as he focused solely on protecting Emily. "Stay back!" he yelled, glancing toward her, but she was frozen, eyes wide, watching the scene unfold. She was terrified, and he could see the fear washing over her little face. "Emily, I need you to trust me." As Jake wrested the man's arm, trying to subdue him, Max growled fiercely, snapping just inches from his face. The man struggled, throwing punches, but Jake was fueled with a father's ferocity. He couldn't let this endangerment continue. Just then, the sound of heavy boots approached, echoing around the bend of the alley. "Police! Hands where I can see them." Relief washed over Jake like cool water, but it didn't wipe away the dread gripping his heart. For a moment, the man's struggle faltered as he glanced to the entrance, and that's when Jake seized the opportunity. "I've got him!" he shouted, pinning the man to the cold ground, adrenaline pouring through him as handcuffs clicked into place. Emily's breathing was fast and shallow. Jake turned to her, a calm he didn't quite feel settling on his face. "It's okay, Emily. We're safe now." But the weight of those words felt heavy, especially with lingering doubts. As the police officers moved in, wrapping up the scene, a gnawing sensation twisted in Jake's stomach. Were they really out of the woods yet? The officer in charge approached him, nodding to Emily. "You all right, kiddo?" Emily gave a small nod, though the worry still hid in her eyes. But Jake was losing himself in the man he had just restrained. "What did he mean?" he demanded, voice low and filled with urgency. "What's coming next?" The officer paused, exchanging a glance with another. "We need to get you both somewhere safe," he said. But Jake noticed the creeping dread in their eyes. While he could protect his daughter from the immediate threat, there was a bigger danger lurking, one that might not be caught so easily. As Emily leaned against him, trembling slightly, Jake hardened his resolve. Whatever twisted plot threatened them, he would unravel it. But just as the first signs of dawn broke in the sky, he caught sight of a shadow slipping away, unnoticed in the commotion. And with it came a chilling realization: the struggle was far from over. What lay behind the curtain of darkness that was draped over their lives? Would they be prepared for the truth waiting to unfold? As the first light of dawn stretched its fingers across the sky, Jake felt the weight of the moment settle around him like a heavy blanket. The chaos of the night slowly began to take shape, the sirens fading, replaced by the distant sound of a bird's call. Yet, that tranquility felt like a hollow promise, one that wouldn't dare to reach them. The officer stepped forward, addressing Jake with a sense of urgency in his tone. "We need to step away from here. You and your daughter." He hesitated, casting a sidelong glance at Emily before refocusing on Jake. "We should get you to safety. We have questions about the men you encountered." Jake nodded, mind racing. "I'm not leaving until I know what's happening. What did that guy mean about what's coming next?" Behind the officer, other police were leading the restrained man away. Jake could see the wisps of panic creeping back into the man's expression. Whatever was happening was bigger than a simple mugging. He could feel it deep in his gut, the echoed words still rattling around in his mind like the haunting refrain of a dark song. As they moved deeper into the alley, Max, the loyal dog, walked side by side with them, senses on high alert. Emily remained close to Jake, her little hand still holding onto his like a lifeline. He glanced at her, trying to convey a sense of safety he wasn't sure they had. "It's okay, Em," he said softly, but her small frame trembled, and it tugged painfully at his heart. "Daddy, what about those men?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He knelt to meet her gaze, forcing a smile. "They can't hurt you anymore. The police will keep us safe." But even as he spoke, his own words tasted bitter. The officers were moving them toward a police cruiser, the blue and red flashing lights still swirling. As Jake opened the door for Emily, he caught sight of the man again, now sitting in the back of a squad car, a bruised scowl on his face. The officer at his side was holding a notepad, scribbling furiously. "Keep your eyes on him, will you?" Jake called to the officer. "He knows something." The officer nodded, but Jake felt a knot in his stomach. Were they just going to let him slip away without revealing what dark web was being spun around them? As they secured Emily in the back seat, the officer turned back to Jake. "First things first, we need to get a statement from both of you. Then we can discuss what we've got." A tightness gripped him. "I can't just sit back and wait. I need to take action." "Mr. Collins," the officer said steadily, "you did well tonight. You protected your daughter. Right now, we need your cooperation to catch whoever is behind this." "I'm going to need more than vague reassurances," Jake said harshly. "That guy left with a threat, and I want answers." A moment passed, the officer's gaze shifting, caught between answering Jake and fulfilling his duties. "Trust me," he said finally. "We'll uncover what is going on, but for now, you and Emily need to rest. You've both been through a lot." Jake leaned back against the seat, frustration mingling with worry as he stole a glance at Emily. Her eyes were starting to flutter, fatigue creeping in. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, wishing he could shield her from all the ugly truths of the world. But that nagging worry would not leave him. Jake's instincts screamed that this wasn't over. He had seen enough in his career to know when something bigger was on the horizon, lurking just out of sight. The cop was right, they needed to get the information hidden beneath the chaos. But what if that knowledge brought a deeper danger than they had faced already? Just then, as the officer moved to close the door, a furious commotion erupted nearby, voices raised in alarm. Jake's heart raced again. "What's happening?" he called out, straining to understand the chaos outside. "Stay calm," the officer shouted, rushed footsteps approaching from all directions. But Jake was already up, pushing the door open. He had to see. As he stepped back onto the pavement, a chill crept down his spine. What new threat lingered beyond the police barrier? Little did they know, the dawn would uncover more than just the light. It would shed light on a conspiracy that could shake them to their core. How much danger were they still in? And then, through the crowd, a piercing scream rippled over the chaos, tightening the spaces around them. Jake turned, heart racing, as fear settled in once more. What if they were being hunted now? The simple promise of safety felt fragile, like glass about to shatter. What new shadows were they about to emerge from, and could they confront whatever truth awaited them? Jake stood frozen, heart pounding in his chest, as the piercing scream echoed through the air. Instinctively, he shielded Emily with his body, his protective father instincts kicking in hard. He peered through the chaos, eyes darting from shouting officers to worried civilians clustered together, their expressions stricken with fear. "Stay close, Em," he murmured, feeling the tension in her small body as she nestled closer to him. The police officers shouted commands, but Jake couldn't focus on that. All he could think about was the threat lurking in the shadows. Suddenly, off to the left, movement caught his eye. A group of people clashed against the backdrop of flashing lights, and out of that crowd, a figure broke free, sprinting toward the alleyway. Jake's gut twisted. That could be one of the men who had attacked them, the one who had threatened him. "Hey! Stop!" he yelled, adrenaline surging. But the figure didn't slow, weaving through the crowd with wild desperation. People were shouting now, some pointing as the figure dashed toward an opening in the police barricade. Without thinking, Jake sprinted after him, not caring if it was dangerous. He could feel Emily tugging at his shirt, her words melting into frantic pleas lost in the chaos. But he couldn't afford to lose sight of whoever that was. "Jake!" an officer yelled, trying to call him back, but he kept his eyes glued to the runner. Time seemed to stretch as Jake pushed himself harder, breath coming in ragged gasps. The morning air was sharp, filling his lungs as he rounded a corner, the pavement slick beneath his feet. As he closed the gap, Jake took in the figure ahead. It was a man, younger than he expected, wearing a hoodie pulled up tight against his face. Panic radiated off him like heat from a fire. There was something in that face, fear, yes, but also knowing. Then, just as Jake was about to catch up, the figure stumbled, knocking into a trash can, sending it clattering over. A profound sound echoed, and Jake seized the chance. He lunged forward, grabbing the man's shoulder, pushing him against the wall. "Who are you running from? What do you know?" Jake demanded, his voice sharp. His grip was hard, but he needed answers fast. The man looked up, eyes wide and wild, and for a split second, Jake saw the truth in them. "You don't understand," he gasped. "It's not what you think. They'll come for you and your daughter if you keep looking." Jake's heart skipped a beat as realization dawned on him. This was more than just a pair of twisted muggers. What kind of danger had they stumbled into? Every warning that had been thrown their way suddenly felt real and terrifying. Just then, more police flooded the alley, rushing to his side. One officer pulled Jake back gently but firmly, while another grabbed the man. "We got him, Jake," the officer said. "Let us hear what he has to say." The man broke from the grasp of the police and shouted, "You need to listen. They're coming. The ones who..." But before he could finish, there was a thundering noise from the direction of the main street. Tires screeched, followed by the rapid thud of footsteps. Jake stepped back, feeling that familiar unease uncoil within him. Glancing at Emily, whose eyes were as wide as saucers, he knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. As more officers joined the scene, Jake struggled to shake away the fear that clung to him. He was sent in the direction of the squad cars, but he needed to know more. What if this was only the beginning? That piercing scream from earlier still echoed in his mind. There were questions he needed to answer, but the answers were growing further away with each fraying second. Jake turned to the crowd, shouting, "Did anyone see where that scream came from?" But as he scanned the gathering, a thought struck him cold. What if someone had already lost their life because of him? The stakes were rising, and with the tantalizing hint of something sinister creeping ever closer, Jake braced himself. What other dark truths were waiting to be uncovered? And would he be able to protect Emily from whatever lay ahead? Jake's mind raced as he pushed through the throng of officers and onlookers. The urgency swelled in his chest. He couldn't ignore the scream or the mysterious urgency that had propelled him into the chaos. His focus shifted from the man in the hoodie to the surroundings. Was there someone who needed help? Despite the officers forming a perimeter, people were still whispering frantically, their faces painted with fear and confusion. "Please, we need to block off that alley better," an officer called out, raising his voice over the murmurs. Jake grabbed the man's sleeve, looking into his eyes, desperate to draw out more information. "Tell me what's happening," he almost pleaded. The man's brow knitted, and he looked over his shoulder, clearly shaken. Just then, a pair of officers pushed closer, dragging their attention toward the commotion on the main street. The man glanced back at Jake, urgency lacing his words. "They're coming. The hunters. You can't hide from them. You have to get your daughter out of here. They know you're involved." Jacob couldn't piece it together. Hunters? Involved in what? Just beyond the police barricade, the crowd began to murmur again, a heaviness in the air turning everyone's eyes to the street. Then he saw them. Several dark SUVs rolled up, tires screeching to a halt as tall figures stepped out, clad in black. The sight sent a chill down Jake's spine. The officers became alert, positioning themselves collectively to block these newcomers from advancing. "Jake, we should go." Emily's voice trembled, pulling on his shirt with frightened urgency. Turning back to her, he felt panic swell again. He couldn't process everything fast enough. How could he protect her when he didn't even know who he was protecting her from? "Stay close, Em," Jake insisted, gripping her hand firmly. He didn't want to let fear seep into her bones, but he could feel it radiating from her. He faced the hooded man again, who was starting to withdraw from the confrontation as the tension escalated with the arrival of the new figures. "Look," the man said, urgency thick in his voice. "Whatever you do, don't trust them. They'll play games with you." But his warning was cut short as one of the black-suited men sauntered toward them, the charisma oozing from him like a snake slithering through the grass. "Gentlemen, ladies," he called, an unsettling smile plastered across his face. "I'm just here to ask a few questions." Jake clenched his jaw. The calm demeanor of the intruder felt wrong against the backdrop of panic flaring among the officers. The atmosphere was thick, heavy. Something was coming that could shatter more than just the tranquility of this morning. "Jake, we should leave now," Emily whispered again, tugging more insistently, her fear seeping into him like a bitter cold. He still wanted answers, but his instincts told him the danger was spiraling out of control. Then, amidst the tension, a loud crash echoed behind him. The trash can that had tumbled earlier was kicked over again, sending muffled voices through the crowd, sparking their panic anew. "What was that?" Someone yelled, almost as if on cue. The atmosphere shifted. The figure in black turned, and with him, the others. They were no longer charming, they looked menacing and ready for confrontation. It was as if they had morphed from ambivalent observers to predators preparing to strike. "Run!" Jake shouted, pulling Emily into a sprint, dodging through the chaos and pressing against the nearest door to escape. His heart raced as he frantically searched for safety. His daughter was all that mattered now. But as they lunged into the building, he glanced back helplessly, wondering what kind of storm was brewing beyond the embrace of those walls. What would they uncover if they could only survive the immediate threat? The answers lingered tantalizingly close, just waiting to plunge deeper into the mystery that was now freezing his blood with fear. Would the hunt lead them somewhere dark and terrifying? Or would they find something powerful enough to protect them both? As the door slammed shut behind them, the muffled chaos outside faded to distant echoes. Jake leaned against the cool metal, gulping in gasps of oxygen as he steadied himself. Emily's grip on his hand was nearly painful, a tight reminder of the urgency that gripped them both. What is happening, Dad?" Emily's voice quivered, her big, innocent eyes searching his for answers. How could he explain this whirlwind of panic when he was just as lost as she was? He couldn't show weakness. "Not now." "I don't know, Em," he admitted, his mind racing. "But we have to be smart." He scanned the room, a cluttered storage area filled with boxes and old furniture, a dusty window barely letting in light. They had some time. He needed a plan. He knelt beside her, forcing a calm demeanor. "Listen, I need you to stay quiet and stay close to me, okay? We're just going to wait until it's safe." Emily nodded, but the uncertainty simmered beneath her composed facade. He didn't blame her. They were caught in the center of a storm, with no idea when the clouds would pass. Just then, soft footsteps echoed outside the door, the unmistakable thud of heavy boots on the pavement. Jake's heart dropped. "They're looking for us," he whispered, his instincts screaming for action. Something told him they wouldn't give up easily. "Dad?" Emily's voice was a soft plea. Should Jake silenced her just as a voice shouted from behind the door. "We know you're in there. Open up." Jake's body stiffened, adrenaline kicking in. He held up a hand to Emily, signaling her to be silent. They couldn't risk being found. Peeking through a crack in the door, he could see dark shapes moving just beyond. The urge to fight and protect surged through him, but what could he do against these looming threats? Is there another way out? He whispered frantically, looking around. It was a dead end. The heavy boxes piled against the walls offered little in the way of escape. The air was heavy with tension, a thick cloud of anxiety that pressed on his chest. As the voices outside grew more aggressive, Jake felt desperation, or maybe it was instinct come alive in him. He needed to protect Emily at all costs. He turned to her, his resolve hardening. I'm going to create a distraction. When I say go, you head for that back window. He pointed. There was no time to second guess. What if they catch you? She asked, eyes wide with fear. They won tea. I promise I'll be right behind you, he reassured her, even though doubt gnawed at him. He would make a choice, one he hoped wouldn't haunt him later. The footsteps grew closer, the muffled threats clearer. We'll break down the door. Jake took a deep breath, steeling himself. He had to act. Now! He yelled. With one swift motion, he hurled a nearby box toward the other end of the room, creating a loud crash. He could feel Emily's gaze pierce into him, but there was no time for hesitation. Go! I'll be right behind you. She darted toward the window just as the door rattled with the weight of a boot slamming against it. Jake's heart raced as he scrambled to keep the chaos at bay. The box of old clothes and dusty books toppled over, creating a path to their refuge. He turned just in time to see Emily squirm through the narrow opening of the window and disappear into the alley outside. Just as he prepared to follow her, the door flew open, and a figure loomed in the doorway. The man's smile was no longer charming, now it twisted into something dark and menacing. You shouldn't have run, he said, stepping inside. Jake felt the walls closing in. Was this the moment everything unraveled? The sense of imminent danger pushed him into action, banishing fear from his mind. He lunged toward the figure, adrenaline surging through him. But a second, larger hand shot out, grabbing the back of Jake's collar. The world spun as he was yanked backward. Emily! He shouted, realizing the distance growing between them. She might be safe, but he was caught, and whatever lay ahead promised to be filled with menace and uncertainty. What were they hiding, and would this ordeal tear them apart? Forever? Jake's mind raced as he struggled against the iron grip holding him. He twisted instinctively, but the man didn't budge. Panic surged through him. He couldn't let this nightmare become real. Let go of me! Jake yelled, trying to shake free. The man only laughed, a deep, booming sound that echoed in the cramped room. Not a chance. You'll regret trying to run, boy, he said. He slammed Jake against the wall, knocking the breath from his lungs. The sudden impact sent a jolt of pain through Jake, but he fought it down. He couldn't show weakness, not now. He needed a way out, needed to be with Emily. Emily! He shouted once more, desperation creeping into his voice. The thought of her out there alone sent fresh waves of fear crashing over him. What if they caught her too? Your little girl isn't going anywhere, the man said, grinning wider. She's lost her chance. It's all about you now. Jake's heart dropped at those words. He had to visualize Emily safe, running through the alley, away from this chaos. It was the only thing keeping him grounded, but he couldn't let his focus drift. He had to think fast. With a sudden movement, Jake twisted around and, using the momentum, drove his elbow back into the man's gut. The grip slackened just enough for him to break free. Gasping for air, he sprinted for the door, the only exit that could lead him back outside. He burst through, finding himself in a dimly lit hallway. The faint sounds of shouting echoed in the distance, brutal reminders of the danger still hunting them. He ran without looking back, his heart hammering, the adrenaline coursing through him like a lifeline. Emily! He called out, his voice raw and desperate. The hallway felt endless, but he didn't slow down. Just ahead, he spotted a staircase leading down. The exit was beneath him, he could feel it. He bolted down the stairs, taking them two at a time. Each footfall echoed off the walls, a rhythmic reminder that every second counted. As he reached the bottom, he pushed through another door and stumbled into an open space. It was a warehouse, empty except for scattered crates and the distant sound of water dripping. His breath came in frantic gasps, the fear of losing Emily driving him onward. Suddenly, through the ruckus, he heard the soft thud of footsteps, heavy and methodical, heading his way. Jake's heart lurched. He pressed himself against a crate, holding his breath. The footsteps got closer, the shadows on the wall shifting with each movement. Then he caught a glimpse, three figures, searching the area methodically. Panic swept over him as they split up. He could feel the tension building, an invisible weight pressing down on him. Just as he considered his next move, a noise from behind him broke through, louder than the water drip. A tentative "Dad?" floated through the air, and his heart soared. It was Emily. "Em." He whispered urgently, peering over the crate. There she was, peeking around a corner, her small frame trembling, but her eyes fiercely determined. "Stay hidden," he hissed, not wanting to attract attention. But he had to decide quickly. The shadowy figures could trap her if they turned. "If we're going to get out, it has to be now," he thought. "Emily, follow me," he urged, moving back to the entrance they had come from. He held out his hand, and she darted across the room, her small feet making only the lightest of sounds on the cold concrete. "Over here." Jake gestured, breathlessly. She made it to his side, her small hand grasping his tightly. But as they turned to make a run for it, Jake felt a chill crawl down his spine. The figures had regrouped, blocking their path. It was too late. "Nowhere to go," one of them said, an unsettling grin splitting their face. "Let her go," Jake shouted, steeling himself, determined to protect his daughter. The tension in the air was electric. Would they push forward, risking everything for escape, or would they falter under the weight of fear? Jake looked down at Emily, fear mirrored in her wide eyes. He had to make another choice, one that could change everything for them both. What would he do to keep his daughter safe? Would he fight, or would he try to negotiate with shadows that were closing in? Time was slipping through his fingers like sand, and uncertainty loomed larger than ever. Jake's mind raced with possibilities as he faced the looming shadows. The figures, with their menacing presence, felt like an insurmountable wave crashing down on him. Emily's hand clasped tightly in his, he felt both a surge of courage and a cold dread swirling deep in his gut. This was it. He had to find a way out. "Listen to me," he shouted, trying to sound brave although his voice quivered. "You don't want to do this. Let her go and we can talk." The tallest figure sneered, stepping closer. "Talk? We've had enough of talks, boy. It's time for action." Jake's heart hammered loudly in his chest. He couldn't let fear control him, he had to protect Emily. "If you want me, then take me. Just let her go." His voice, raw and desperate, echoed in the vast warehouse. For a split second, he saw doubt flicker across the men's expressions. Perhaps they weren't prepared for this kind of reaction. In that moment, Jake felt a flicker of hope, maybe he could distract them long enough to make a break for it. He thrust himself forward, calling upon the primal instinct to fight. Run!" he yelled, pushing her behind him. Without thinking, he lunged at the first figure, swinging wildly. The man stumbled back, caught off guard. As Jake threw a second punch, adrenaline surged through him, drowning out the pain of his earlier confrontation. Emily darted behind a stack of crates, her heart pounding as she stayed low, listening to her father's frantic movements. "Get him!" shouted one of the others. The weight of their footsteps thudded through the warehouse, closing in on him. Jake's breath came in short gasps, desperation lending him a vicious strength. The second man lunged forward, grabbing Jake by the shoulders and twisting him around. In a flash, the world spun and Jake found himself pinned against a crate. "You should have listened," the figure snarled, breath hot and rancid in Jake's face, but Jake used the moment's chaos to lift his knee sharply into the man's midsection. The blow caught him by surprise, and he staggered back, gasping in pain. Bolting back to Emily's side felt like racing against time. "Stay close to me," he urged, and as Emily emerged from her hiding place, her small face was etched with fear but also unyielding resolve. She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of trust and pure determination. The remaining man stepped aside as Jake stood shoulder to shoulder with Emily, readying himself for what was coming next. "They'll come for you again. But I won't let them take you," he said quietly, enough for only her to hear. There was no turning back now. Suddenly, Jake spotted a narrow path leading to a second exit on the far side of the warehouse. "We have to make a run for it, Em. On my count 1, 2, 3. They bolted, their feet pounding against the cold concrete, racing away from the threats behind them. But the third figure, quicker and angrier than the rest, blocked their path. "You think you can escape?" he shouted, lunging forward. With Emily right behind him, Jake surged forward, knowing this was their final chance. He had to fight with everything he had left. Body and spirit merged as he flung himself at the figure, and for a brief moment, everything went quiet. In the midst of the scuffle, Jake's thoughts raced. What would happen if they escaped, but the threat didn't end? Could they find safety again? As the two men struggled, their shadows danced across the walls, a chilling reminder of the darkness chasing them. Then, in one swift motion, Jake felt the figure's grip loosen just as a loud crash echoed from above. Dust and debris rained down as a heavy metal staircase above shuddered under some unseen weight, and the distraction threw the remaining men off balance. "Move!" Jake shouted, gripping Emily's hand tighter as he launched toward the opening. They had to reach that exit. Freedom awaited them, but would they grasp it in time? Their hearts pounding in sync, Jake's legs carried them faster than ever before. The air was electric with urgency as they approached the threshold to escape, but beyond it lay a world that might hold more terror than the shadows they left behind. What awaited them at the exit? Would it be sanctuary, or a new threat around the corner? The chase was only just beginning. Just as Jake and Emily burst through the door and into the bright morning light, a deafening crash echoed behind them. Dust and debris flew as they stumbled into the open. Heart pounding, Jake glanced back just in time to see the last figure that pursued them collapse beneath the weight of the staircase. Relief washed over him, but there was no time to dwell on it. "Run, Em. We need to get to the police," he shouted, pulling her along, adrenaline surging. They raced through the narrow alleyway, the sun painting the sky vibrant shades of orange and pink above them as it chased away the night's chaos. "Daddy, what about the others?" Emily panted, her small legs struggling to keep pace with his determined strides. "They're caught. We need to get help," he replied, glancing back. The threat was not far behind, he could almost sense it. The shadows seemed to stretch further, lurking in every corner. They were terrifyingly alive. The feeling of danger clung to him, a fog of anxiety that refused to lift. They rounded a corner, and there, in the very familiar distance, stood the police officers who had initially secured the area. Relief washed over him again, but the uncertainty of what was to come pressed heavily on his heart. Jake shouted, "Over here. Help!" As they drew closer, the officers turned, faces erupting in expressions of shock and urgency. He could see their disbelief shift to action as they rushed forward. "Jake! Emily!" One officer called out, already moving to intercept them. "What happened?" "Those men," Jake started, but the words choked in his throat as he realized just how much had transpired. He was still processing the impact of the night's events. "Jake, are you hurt?" the officer asked, concern evident in his voice as he scanned for any obvious injuries. "No, but they're coming. We need to get Emily to safety," Jake urged, feeling the urgency spike inside him. He watched Emily's wide eyes search the faces of the officers, and he added quickly, "They're part of something bigger. They were after her." Before the officers could respond, two unmarked SUVs roared down the street, tires screeching loudly against the pavement. Jake felt a fresh wave of panic ripple through him. Not again, he thought, and turned to Emily to shield her from whatever threat approached. "Get down," he shouted, flinging himself over her as the SUVs rolled to a stop. The doors flung open. Out poured figures clad in black, some from the night before. They began yelling orders, completely disregarding the officers now rushing toward them. "Where's the girl?" one of them shouted, scanning the area with a vicious glint in his eyes. Jake felt his blood run cold as fear crept back in. "Emily, behind me," he instructed, positioning himself as a sturdy barricade, adrenaline and instinct sharpening his senses. The noise escalated as the officers shouted back, forming a protective wall in front of Jake and Emily. Within moments, tensions erupted, sides clashing. Jake found his heart racing, a mix of fear and resolve pushing him to protect Emily at all costs. He could see the fear on her face once more as the world devolved into chaos. The shouting grew louder and the cries for control cut through the air like jagged glass. "What do they want?" Emily whispered, voice trembling. "I don't know, sweetheart," Jake replied, trying to keep his voice steady, but panic twisted within him. As the melee surged, Jake locked eyes with a young officer who had previously aided him. "You need to get her out of here. Protect her," he urged, inching toward Emily. "Jake!" Emily pulled at him, fear written all over her small face. "Trust me. Please," he shouted, pushing her toward the officer. The battle was quickening, and they needed to escape. But Emily's voice was small. The officer took her hand gently, ready to guide her out of the turmoil, but Jake wouldn't let go just yet. He needed to ensure she was safe before he took any risks. "Go," he insisted. "Get her to a safe place." He stepped deeper into the commotion, adrenaline surging as he grabbed hold of the nearest threat, diverting attention away. From the officer and Emily, within the chaos, he felt strength return as he pushed forward, voices rising in anger, fists swinging. Jake fought with everything he had, propelled by the thought of Emily safe. He grappled with one man, sending the shadow crashing back against a heap of crates. "Stay together," an officer yelled, clashing against another figure. They were outnumbered but fueled by a shared purpose, to protect the innocent. As officers moved in to subdue the threats, Jake fought his way closer to Emily, his heart racing. He spied the officer leading her away just beyond the fray, her face etched in uncertainty, mixed with fear and trust. Finally, the ruckus began to settle as officers wrested control from the intruders. But Jake's gaze remained fixed on Emily, the dwindling inches between them feeling like a chasm of doubt. Just as he thought he could reach her, another rumble of chaos surged as one of the men, still desperate, took aim at her. "No!" Jake roared, propelled by paternal instinct, but before chaos could strike, a resounding shot rang through the air, and Jake felt a deep sensation of relief wash over him as backup had arrived, multiple officers managing to end the oncoming threat. Emily's scream echoed, but it was drowned out by the whoosh of approaching officers. The officer protecting her pulled her close, shielding her against the chaos that was dissolving quickly around them. "Daddy!" she cried out, reaching toward him. "Emily, I'm right here," Jake called, pushing his way toward her, desperation siphoning through him as he rushed past the remnants of the struggle. Finally, he reached her, scooping her into his arms, bliss mixing with profound exhaustion as she hugged him tightly. "I thought I lost you," Jake breathed, tears unwittingly welling in his eyes, with the shouting finally simmering as officers restrained the remaining threats, the weight of the night began to lift, revealing the dawn against the grime of darkness. "You're safe now," he said, finally letting the relief sweep over him. Emily's wide eyes filled with trust, catching the authenticity in his voice. Later, as the sun rose higher, Jake sat next to her in the back of a police cruiser, the sound of sirens beckoning in the background. The police worked on getting answers from the apprehended men who had been part of a much scarier conspiracy. Yet despite the turmoil, fear was pushed into the background as they finally felt a flicker of safety, a chance to breathe. "We'll get through this," Jake promised, his hand finding hers, a foundation of comfort amidst the chaos. "Together," she echoed back, her voice strong for such a small frame. They had faced darkness, but together, they began to weave their way into the light, hope uncoiling in their hearts. Now, if you found this journey inspiring, here's the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, because it really makes a difference, and hey, don't wait not even one more second to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Let them feel this hope, this light. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about the ending. Your voice matters.